Welcome back, family. To everyone already subscribed to Expose Cheaters by NDU Tales, thank you. Your time, your trust, and your comments keep this community alive. As you listen, share your thoughts, feelings, and lessons below so we can learn together. Settle in. The truth and the twist are coming. Let's get into it. I wasn't even planning to talk about this one, but the moment I read it, I knew I had to share it because the real damage did not start in court. It started much earlier, when one spouse began treating private conversations like negotiations, and the other kept mistaking silence for peace. That is the red flag here. When somebody starts protecting their image more than the relationship, you need facts, boundaries, and paperwork, not just hope. The day my wife left with almost everything, it was raining so lightly it felt disrespectful. Not a real storm, not the kind that lets you say the sky understands. Just a thin February drizzle over Cleveland, turning the front steps dark and slick, while two movers carried out the walnut sideboard my mother gave us when we bought the house in Shaker Heights. I stood in the doorway with my hands in my coat pockets and watched a stranger wrap my dining chairs in gray blankets like they were fragile royalty. My wife, Nadine, did not cry. She checked items off a clipboard and kept her lipstick perfect. If you are already feeling how cold this divorce turned, make sure to like this video, share it with somebody who has been through betrayal, and subscribe for more real relationship drama stories like this. And tell me in the comments right now, when a divorce starts this quietly, do you think the worst part has already happened or is it still coming? People always imagine divorce has one loud sound, a scream, a slammed door, a glass breaking in the sink. Ours sounded like packaging tape. Rip, seal, marker on cardboard, the low grunt of men lifting boxes marked office, linen, seasonal. The soundtrack of a life being sorted into categories. I kept telling myself I had agreed to this. I had signed the settlement. I had chosen not to fight for the house, the SUV, the joint savings, the patio furniture, even my grandfather's vinyl collection, because I was too tired to turn 20 years of marriage into a courtroom sport. Tired men call surrender maturity when they cannot admit they are hurt. My name is Loren Mercer. I was 48 then, a transit systems analyst with Regional Rail Authority, the kind of man who checked departure boards even on vacation and carried a notepad because I hated trusting memory with anything important. I am black, born on the south side of Chicago, raised mostly by my grandmother after my mother took double shifts at a nursing home, and my father disappeared into one of those vague family explanations nobody challenges until they are grown. I moved to Ohio for work in my late 20s and stayed because the city felt like a place where a steady man could build a clean life. Nadine and I met in Detroit at a nonprofit fundraising conference in 2003. She was from Columbus, working public relations for a health foundation, all press skirts and level eye contact, and that polished way of speaking that made even simple observations sound like they belonged in a brochure. She laughed with her whole shoulders, not just her mouth. I remember that because it made her seem honest. I was wrong about some things, but not that. She was honest in the beginning. Or maybe she only became dishonest once honesty stopped delivering what she wanted. That is harder to admit because it means change is real. We married 18 months later at a brick church near University Circle, with my Uncle Darrell sweating through a navy suit while trying to grill in dress shoes behind the fellowship hall. Nadine hated that smoke got into her hair. My grandmother loved it because she said a wedding should smell like food and relatives. We built a decent life. Not glamorous. Real. We had one daughter, Imani, when I was 32 and Nadine was 30. We bought our house 3 years later. For bedrooms, a narrow driveway, hydrangeas out front that never listened to me, and a basement where I kept old train maps and the cedar chest my grandmother left me. I was not a dramatic husband. I fixed the loose cabinet doors. I drove Imani to violin lessons. I paid bills on the first of the month and called the plumber before a problem became a disaster. I packed Nadine's lunch sometimes an orange peeled halfway because she said she liked it when it started. Love, for me, was maintenance and repetition. Love was noticing the rear tire looked low before she drove to Akron. Nadine used to call me steady as a church clock. It sounded like praise until years later I heard the insult folded inside it. Some people do not want to be steady. They want to feel chosen every day in louder ways. The unraveling did not begin with cheating. It began with curation. That is the most accurate word I can find for it. Nadine started curating our life the way boutique hotels curate lobbies. New throw pillows nobody could sit against, framed black and white photos of places we had never been, candles too expensive to burn, strategic stories told at dinner parties about our shared vision. She said that phrase often, shared vision. Meanwhile, our real conversations got shorter and more administrative. Did I pay the insurance? Was Imani's FAFSA submitted? Could I call the contractor? The marriage still functioned. It just stopped breathing on its own. By the fall, before everything broke, I had a ritual every Thursday morning. I stopped at Gus's Diner on East 185th before work, took booth 3 by the window, and ordered turkey sausage, rye toast, and coffee black. Same waitress. Same scratch counter. Same old men arguing over whether like it was a local politician. I liked places that did not reinvent themselves. One Thursday, Gus leaned over the register and said, "You look like a man rehearsing a speech." I laughed it off. Truth was, I had started mentally composing questions for my wife and deleting them before I ever spoke them. That was not normal, and I knew it. Nadine had become protective of her phone in a way that felt small at first. She used to leave it anywhere. Kitchen island, bathroom counter, cup holder. Then suddenly it lived face down, screen dimmed, hand always near it. If I walked into the den while she was texting, she angled the screen like a reflex. The first time I noticed, I told myself not to become one of those suspicious husbands who turn every vibration into a theory. The second time, I reminded myself that privacy and secrecy are not automatically the same. The 15th time, I sat in my parked car outside work and admitted I was afraid. I made my first choice there. I could have taken her phone one night while she slept. I knew her old passcode. I probably could have guessed a new one because Nadine loved meaningful dates and recurring patterns. But I did not do it, not because I was noble, because I wanted at least one part of myself to remain intact if the marriage collapsed. I told myself that if I had to become sneaky to prove she was sneaky, I would hate the evidence anyway. So I decided to ask her directly. That sounds brave. Mostly it was desperate and late. She was in the kitchen slicing strawberries when I asked the first question. Sunday afternoon. Imani had gone back to Howard after a long weekend. The dishwasher hummed. There was jazz on low from the speaker above the fridge because Nadine liked to keep a soundtrack under uncomfortable moments, as if Miles Davis could make hard truths less hard. I said, "Are you talking to somebody in a way you would not want to know about?" She did not drop the knife, did not gasp. She set it down, lined the slices into a neat fan, and said, "That is a very loaded question." That answer told me more than denial would have. We argued for an hour and said almost nothing useful. She called me paranoid. I called her evasive. She said I had been emotionally unavailable for years. I said emotional unavailability did not explain hidden messages at midnight. She said I was trying to control her friendships. I said married people do not act mysterious with harmless friends. At some point she crossed her arms and stared out the window over the sink while a city bus hissed to stop outside, and I realized she was not shocked that I suspected her. She was annoyed that I had finally interrupted the story she had been preparing to tell about us. For 3 weeks after that, we performed reconciliation badly. She offered more details about where she was going, but only after I asked. I offered gentleness I did not feel because I thought maybe calm would make truth safer to tell. We attended one marriage counseling session in Beechwood with a therapist who wore sharp green glasses and asked direct questions neither of us answered directly. Nadine said she felt unseen. I said I felt replaced by a version of me she had edited into a dull husband. The therapist asked whether there was a third party affecting trust. Nadine tucked one leg under herself and said, "That is not the point," which, of course, meant it was. I found out on a Tuesday because of dry cleaning. There is no elegant way to say that. I stopped at Price Cleaners after work to pick up one of Nadine's coats because she had texted that she was stuck with a donor dinner. Mrs. Price handed me the coat and said, "Tell your wife her husband was in such a hurry Friday. He forgot his receipt." I said, "What husband?" The woman blinked, looked down, then up. The tall gentleman with the camel overcoat. I assumed she stopped. I thanked her. I walked out with the coat hanging over my arm like evidence in a movie nobody asked to be in. I did not confront Nadine that night. That was my second choice, and it could have gone very differently. I could have blown up, called her names, thrown the coat onto the kitchen table, and demanded a confession while my blood was hot enough to make me reckless. Instead, I sat in the dark living room until after midnight, with only the porch light leaking through the curtains. I chose to wait because I knew anger would make me loud, and loud men get remembered as the problem even when they are reacting to one. I wanted the truth with its shoes tied, not running around trying to protect itself. The next morning, I asked again. Not in the kitchen this time. In the car, parked outside her office before she got out. I showed her the dry cleaning ticket. Her face changed in layers. First irritation, then calculation, then something like relief. She exhaled and said, "His name is Desmond." That was it. No dramatic lead-in. No apology. Just a name placed between us like a file on a conference table. Desmond was a donor relations consultant she had been working with for almost a year. It had become emotional first, then physical a handful of times. I still remember hating the phrase "a handful." It sounded neat, portable. Honestly, this is where I think things went wrong in a deeper way than the cheating itself. The affair was ugly, yes, but what chilled me was how she narrated it like a person unveiling a strategic pivot. She said Desmond saw her. She said with me she felt managed, not loved. She said she had been shrinking for years inside my predictability. I sat with both hands on the steering wheel and thought, you are describing boredom like betrayal was medicine for it. Tell me this. When somebody starts making their wrongdoing sound like self-discovery, do you still recognize them as a person you married? We separated that week. I moved into a furnished duplex in Cleveland Heights above a retired music teacher who practiced scales at odd hours and watered her porch plants in house slippers, no matter the temperature. The place had slanted floors, a radiator that clanked like it held grudges, and one narrow closet that smelled faintly of mothballs. My daughter helped me carry in 2 suitcases, a lamp, my laptop bag, and the air fryer. My cousin insisted a divorced man could not survive without. Imani was 20 and too observant for my comfort. She looked around that apartment and said softly, "Dad, this is temporary. Do not decorate your pain." Nadine filed first. Her attorney was polished, smiling, expensive. The kind of man who wore cufflinks on a weekday afternoon, as if he expected portrait lighting to follow him indoors. Mine was a quieter woman named Celeste Fry from Warrensville Heights, who took notes with a fountain pen and never wasted a sentence. She asked whether I wanted to pursue dissipation of marital assets tied to the affair, whether I had proof of spending, whether there were grounds to contest valuation on the house or retirement accounts. I heard every option. Then I surprised her by saying, "I want this over." Celeste leaned back and studied me like I had announced I was giving away blood. Nadine asked for the house, the Lexus, primary possession of most furnishings, a larger split of liquid savings, and a structured buyout on my share of her consultancy. Side income claim, which was laughable because my side income was basically transit conference stipends and one article I got paid $900 to write. Celeste said we could fight, and might win some of it. I knew she was right, but I had begun to believe something poisonous and quiet. That maybe my failure to notice the affair early, my years of being dutiful instead of expressive, had helped build a runway for all of this. Shame is expensive. It makes terrible financial decisions sound honorable. So I signed. I signed away the house where I had painted Imani's nursery pale yellow, with a roller balanced on a borrowed ladder. I signed away the patio set I assembled with a socket wrench and bad directions while mosquitoes chewed my ankles. I signed away the blue velvet sofa Nadine bought after 3 stores and 2 arguments because she said our home needed one brave thing. I signed away more than I should have, and everybody close to me knew it. My barber, Ellis, stopped mid-lineup and said, "Man, peace is good, but not every peace is holy." I laughed then. Later, alone, that line sat with me. After the divorce was final, Nadine moved fast. Too fast for grief, which told me grief was not driving her. She and Desmond moved into the house within 2 months. She posted tasteful photos online, new rug, spring flowers, caption about fresh chapters and honest joy. Friends who did not know details left heart emojis like confetti. I muted her accounts because I am human, not evolved. Meanwhile, I spent my evenings eating catfish from a carryout on Lee Road, learning which floorboard in the duplex squeaked, and trying not to build whole courtroom speeches in my head after midnight. Starting over is humiliating mostly because it is so uncinematic. There was one thing Nadine did not care about during the settlement: my grandmother's cedar chest. It was in the basement, heavy, unfashionable, and smelled like old paper, peppermint, and wood polish. She said it could go with my side of the family items, which told me she had never once opened it properly. Inside were church programs, family photos, a hand-sewn table runner, my old train sketches, and 6 small spiral notebooks from different years. They were not diaries exactly, more like records. I had spent years jotting observations after long days whenever something bothered me enough that silence felt dishonest. I had forgotten how much of myself I had hidden in there. At first, I opened those notebooks just to feel anchored to a version of my life that still made sense. What I found was a map of patterns. Notes about Nadine canceling on family cookouts, once Desmond's name first appeared in passing. Scribbles about unexplained hotel charges she blamed on conference glitches. Dates of donor galas, weird late-night strategy calls, the time she snapped because I had moved her second phone charger from the den. I was not writing a case back then. I was writing because details calmed me, but laid end to end. The details became a timeline, not for revenge, for reality. That matters when somebody has been revising you for months. I did not run to court with those notebooks. I want to be honest about that, because people love the fantasy of instant reversal. Real life is slower and more annoying. What I did first was sit at Gus's diner for 2 hours with a legal pad and transfer dates. Receipt here, gala there, credit card payment, weekend trip, a note about Nadine claiming she was in Cincinnati when Imani had called and heard late traffic through the phone. Gus topped off my coffee twice and finally said, "Either you are solving a murder or trying not to have one." I laughed harder than that joke deserved. Then I called Celeste. Celeste did not get excited. That is one reason I trusted her. Excited lawyers can cost you more than angry spouses. She spread my notes across her desk and asked for corroboration, not emotion. Bank statements, hotel records, calendar entries, messages. I told her I had no illegal access to private accounts and did not want any. She nodded approvingly and said we would work with what existed lawfully. That week I requested archived credit card statements, expense reimbursements, and mileage logs from my own records. There was thousands spent from joint funds during the period Nadine claimed the affair was mostly emotional. Emotional, apparently, came with boutique hotels and lakefront dinners. Celeste filed a motion tied to non-disclosure of marital asset use during separation negotiations. It was not the dramatic cheating case people imagine, because Ohio is not a movie. Nobody storms into court and gets handed a mansion because of betrayal. But concealed spending matters. Misrepresentation matters. Signed agreements can be revisited when material facts were buried under polished lies. Nadine's attorney came in confident and left less so after discovery requests started landing. Desmond's name showed up in reservation confirmations, event registrations, and one art fair purchase Nadine had boldly labeled development outreach. Unless donor development now included matching pottery mugs in Napa glaze, the paper trail had grown a personality. This next part did not happen in one glorious hearing. It happened through ugly little adjustments, delays, supplemental filings, tense conference room negotiations with bad coffee and recycled air. Nadine had to produce more documentation, then explanations for explanations. The court did not punish her for cheating. It claimed that she had hidden significant joint expenditures while arguing for a settlement based on a misleading financial picture. That distinction is important. Consequences often arrive wearing administrative shoes, not thunderbolts. Her refinance on the house got complicated because the revised numbers changed debt ratios. Her attorney fees climbed. Her image of herself as the efficient adult in the room started cracking. I saw the first crack in person when we met for mediation in late November. Nadine looked thinner, not glamorous thinner, worried thinner. Desmond did not come, of course. Men like that rarely stand where the fluorescent lights are rude. She kept tapping a pen against her legal pad until the mediator asked her to stop. At one point she whispered, "You are really doing this?" I looked at her and said, "No, I am finally answering it." I surprised myself with how calm that sounded. Months earlier, I would have mistaken calm for weakness. By then, I understood it could also be controlled. There is a difference between yielding and simply not shouting. The revised settlement did not restore everything. I do not want to sell fantasy. I did not get the house back. I did not suddenly reclaim every piece of furniture or the years lost to distrust. But I received a significant reimbursement from concealed marital spending, a better division of retirement contributions, and release from a debt obligation Nadine had originally shifted toward me. Enough to matter, enough to stand up straight, enough to move from temporary living into choice. Celeste handed me the final figures and said, "This is not victory, it is a correction." That word landed better than victory ever could have. Victory is loud. Correction lets you sleep. Nadine's regret started there, but not because of me, because real life had finally touched the fantasy. Desmond, it turned out, liked being chosen more than he liked being responsible. Once legal trouble, financial strain, and reputational whispers entered the room, his enthusiasm thinned out. He traveled more, answered less, delayed moving his things fully into the house. One Saturday, Imani came by my apartment furious because she had stopped to grab mail and found Desmond's framed family photo turned face down on the entry console. "He is a coward," she said. I told her not to carry my bitterness for me. She said, "This one is mine." By January, the house Nadine fought so hard to keep had become a burden. Refinancing under the revised terms raised her monthly costs. Desmond's consulting income had seasonal variability, which is professional language for unreliable. The hydrangeas needed work. The furnace made a noise. Property taxes had climbed. Funny thing about winning a house to prove a point, the gutters still clog in November. Nadine called me one icy evening to ask for the number of the plumber I used. I gave it to her because I am not made of spite. After silence, she said, "I did not think all this through." I said nothing for her so long she thanked me like silence was mercy. What shocked me about this situation was not that she regretted the affair. Plenty of people regret mess once it stains their own carpet. It was that she regretted misjudging what I would do. Nadine had built her strategy around the husband, who would rather swallow hurt than create conflict. She expected me to stay tired. She expected my decency to keep functioning like a coupon she could redeem forever. That, to me, is one of the hardest lessons in stories like this. Sometimes people do not only betray your trust, they build plans around your restraint. And the moment you become precise instead of passive, their whole version of you collapses. I moved that spring into a small brick bungalow in South Euclid with a postage stamp yard and a sunroom barely big enough for 2 chairs and a plant that wanted more commitment than I had. I bought it because the mortgage made sense and because nobody else's memories were baked into the walls. The first thing I moved in was a cedar chest. The second was an old station clock I found in an estate sale in Parma. Brass rim, black numbers, 1 hairline crack near the 7. I hung in the kitchen where I could see it from the stove. I wanted time in that house to feel observed. Around then, I made another choice that could have gone differently. A friend urged me to post everything online, expose Nadine, let the curated image burn. He even drafted a vicious paragraph for me over bourbon at a jazz spot in downtown Cleveland, where the saxophone was good enough to make angry men believe they were philosophers. I considered it for one ugly hour. Then I deleted the draft. Not because she deserved protection, because public humiliation is a hungry animal. Feed it once, and it starts eating parts of you too. I decided I wanted a repaired life, not an audience. That choice saved me more than revenge would have. Imani watched all of this with that painful adult-child clarity children develop when parents stop pretending well. One afternoon she came over from campus with a grocery bag full of produce, opened my refrigerator, frowned at its bachelor emptiness, and started cooking red beans and rice like she was restoring order. She said, "Mom keeps trying to talk around it." I asked what that meant. She stirred the pot and said, "She talks about growth and complexity. Nobody in that house says the simple sentence." I knew exactly which sentence she meant. I cheated, I lied, and I damaged people. Simple sentences are expensive because they do not leave room to hide furniture inside them. Summer brought the call I never expected. Nadine asked if we could meet. Not to discuss Imani, not paperwork, not the house. Just talk. We met at a coffee shop in Tremont on a humid Wednesday afternoon. Ceiling fans moving warm air in slow circles, while somebody at the counter argued over oat milk with the seriousness of a Supreme Court brief. Nadine arrived 10 minutes early, which she only did when nervous. She looked polished as ever until she sat down and folded in on herself a little. Then I saw it plainly. She was exhausted, not theatrically sad, structurally tired, like a building under the wrong load. She told me Desmond had moved out. No dramatic showdown. No confession scene. Just attrition. He said the pressure was too much. The legal mess changed the energy, and he needed space to think. I almost laughed because men who help detonate lives always want space once smoke gets in their clothes. Nadine stared into her coffee and said, "I thought I was choosing honesty. I was really choosing flattery." That was the first truly honest sentence I had heard from her in over a year. Then she said, very quietly, "And I thought taking control would make me feel safe. It made me feel alone." I did not comfort her the way old instincts wanted me to. That mattered. I listened. I nodded. But I did not rush in with tissue, absolution, or that husbandly habit of stabilizing the room for her. She asked whether I hated her. I said, "No, but I finally see you clearly, and that is not the same thing as forgiving fast." She cried then, softly, with embarrassment more than drama. The younger version of me might have mistaken her tears for a bridge back. The older version knew grief can be real, without being a reason to reopen a door. Boundaries are not cruel. Sometimes they're the first truthful language left. After that meeting, Nadine started selling things. First the patio furniture. She once insisted completed the house. Then artwork. Then the Lexus, replaced with something practical and less shiny. Regret has a very ordinary look in real life. It looks like Facebook marketplace listings and cancel vacations. She never said, "I should have kept the marriage instead." That would have been too simple and maybe not fully true. What she regretted was the story she had told herself, that she could pull apart one life, step into another, keep the aesthetic, keep the daughter's respect, keep the house, keep the image, and somehow not keep the consequences. As for me, I got quieter in a better way. Not shut down quietly. Deliberate quiet. I started taking the RTA train east on Saturday mornings just to ride and think, notebook in hand, watching people carry grocery bags, work boots, church hats, stroller wheels, ordinary burdens. I began writing again, not about transit delays or suspicious patterns this time, but about thresholds, the small moments when you stop pleading with the past to explain itself and start arranging your own chairs in present. I kept those pages private. Some truths do not need publication. They just need witnesses. Sometimes a witness is your future self, showing up late but sincere. Ellis at the barbershop. Noticed the difference before I did. He snapped the cape around my neck one Friday and said, "You do not look haunted anymore." I asked what haunted looked like. He said, "Like a man living in rooms he no longer occupies." Leave it to a barber to say something your therapist would charge full price for. We both laughed. Around us, clippers buzzed, sports radio argued in the corner, and a little boy in the waiting chair swung his feet while studying his own fresh haircut in a hand mirror. Life had not become magical. It had become mine again. That was enough and more than enough. I still saw Nadine at graduations, family dinners, Imani's 21st birthday brunch at a hotel restaurant downtown, where the waffles cost too much and the coffee somehow tasted burned and weak at the same time. We learned a new language with each other. Brief. Civil, exactly. Once, while waiting for the valet, she said, "I know you think I only regret the money in the house." I said nothing. She added, I regret becoming somebody who could look you in the face and keep arranging lies. That landed harder than any apology speech could have, not because it repaired us, because it named the real injury without trying to polish it. This situation just shows that losing assets and losing yourself are not the same disaster. I lost the house, the furniture, the savings split I should have fought harder over from day one, but she lost the right to keep believing she was the cleanest person in the story. And once that cracked, everything she had taken started feeling heavier in her hands. I got something back too, though it took me too long to call it by its right name. Self-respect. Not ego, not revenge. Just the steady refusal to let someone else's polished narrative become my biography. Let me know what you would have done, because I still think about those choices. If this story hit you in a real way, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe for more powerful relationship and betrayal stories like this. Stories like Lauren's prove that losing property is painful, but losing your self-respect is worse. And before we close, tell me in the comments, do you think his biggest mistake was signing too fast or trusting too long? Last fall, I refinished my kitchen table myself. Not an heirloom, just sturdy oak from a second-hand place near Lakewood, nicked in 3 corners and solid as a promise. I sanded in the garage with the door open while a Browns game played faintly from somebody's radio down the block, and the air smelled like leaves and motor oil. Then I rubbed the stain in slow circles and watched the grain wake up. There's a lesson in that, I think. Some things do not come back as they were. They come back more honest. I eat there now under the station clock, in a house nobody had to lose for me to keep. The part that stays with me is not the courtroom adjustment. It is Loren sitting at Gus's diner with those notebooks, finally choosing precision over exhaustion, and later refusing to humiliate Nadine online even when he had every reason to. That is the difference between reacting and rebuilding. When somebody betrays you, the goal is not just to get money back or prove them wrong. It is to make sure you do not abandon your own standards trying to answer their damage. The end.